Ayya Santacitta, and then we will have a wonderful session, and we're so grateful to have this special guest. Thank you. We're so grateful to have you here. Thank
Thank
you.
you. You know, I always feel a little bit awkward if I have the bio read out. So should I start, Annie?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
So good morning. In my world, it's good morning. It's shortly past 7. At yours, it's about 10, I suppose. So I'm a friend of Venerable Ken Motrolma since 2009, when we met for the first time at her monastery when it was still in Vermont. And I have been, in contact with her since then. And I'm originally from Austria, and I've been trained in the Thai forest tradition for many years in Thailand and in England. And I came to live here in America in 2009, actually, at that time when I also met Venerable Ken Motrolma. And I have also been receiving teachings in the Nyingma tradition. My teacher is Shetchen Rabchum Rinpoche, who is the grandson of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, if you have maybe heard of him. And I did the whole Ngöndro as well in the Nyingma tradition. And Venerable Ken Motrolma has been very, very helpful, to help me to navigate inside of the Vajrayana. And I have received a lot of help and direction from her. And, as you can see behind me, there's a tanka. This is Eka Chatti, the Dzogchen protectress. And on the other side, there is what's called the Arahant Bhikkhunis. That's the enlightened nuns who have lived at the time of the Buddha. And in the midst of them is the earth. Because after, practicing in those male traditions for a very long time, for me, my main teacher is the earth now. Because I think she is speaking to us very loudly, and I feel like she is basically displaying the Dharma perfectly. And I really want to dedicate the remaining years of my life, to serve the regeneration of the earth, and how the teachings of the Dharma, can help us to become more connected to what is happening. And that's why I have, ended up founding the Aloka Earth Room. That's where I live now. And this is a small monastery in Marin, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I live here together with a laywoman and teach earth-based teachings and try to weave them into the mainstream Buddhism, basically. And yes, and Ken Motrolma has asked me if I can offer some teachings on the 4 immeasurables. You have just been doing the prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. And in my tradition, I'm trained in the Pali tradition. They are called the 4 Brahma Viharas. Brahmas are certain kind of very high gods, and they have very vast minds. And Vihara means dwelling place. So where I'm staying here, this is the Aloka Earth Room, is a Vihara. And so is those vast dwelling places and these practices of the 4 immeasurables, of the 4 Brahma Viharas, they are actually designed, to help us to open the mind limitless. And they are like 4 different Brahma Viharas, 4 different facets or tones of universal empathy. They are not emotions, but they are qualities, dimensions of the heart. And, the first one in the Pali tradition, it's called metta. And I think in Sanskrit, it's called maitri. And this is, loving kindness or benevolence, it's translated, or goodwill sometimes also, or love. The second one is compassion, which is very important in the Vajrayana because and in the Mahayana, a very central quality as a motivation, for developing wisdom. And in the Pali tradition, it's called Karuna. And then we have the next one is Mudita in Pali. And the translation here is gladness or sympathetic joy. And the last one is upekkha, equanimity, equipoise, evenness. And I think the order of the four Brahmaviharas in the Pali tradition is different than in the Mahayana tradition. For us, in the Pali tradition, upekkha is considered the last one. It's considered the summum bonum of the three which come before. Whereas I think in the Vajrayana, upekkha is the first one. So it's just different, understandings of the very same qualities. And the metta, the loving kindness, is considered like the basic one. Is that, which opens the heart wide, and it's compared to a mother's love, for her only child. She wants to protect that kind of a love. She wants to have the well-being of the child, and that's more important to her than her own well-being. And that's considered, like the root quality. And then if that quality is turned towards beings who are less fortunate than we are, it transforms into compassion. And then if it is turned towards sentient beings who are more successful and happy than we are, then it becomes mudita. And if it's turned, towards the ups and downs, then it becomes equipoise, upekkha. But it all starts with metta. Sometimes, that whole image of those four qualities is compared to images of the sun. Metta would be, the sun at noon, which shines on everyone in the same way, doesn't, have any preference. And then compassion would be the sun in the evening when it sets, when it goes towards the darkness. And mudita would be the sun, in the morning when it rises and there is like dewdrops and it is reflected in million dewdrops and there's a lot of happy bird songs, that kind of a quality, very uplifting, energizing. And then equipoise, equanimity, upekkha is compared with the cool light of the full moon, which doesn't is not the direct sunlight, but it's the indirect sunlight. The full moon, which has like a certain a certain kind of, coolness is the right word, or sometimes it's compared to the laugh of a grandmother, who has seen everything under the sun, basically, and is no longer thrown in the same way, like a mother might be. So that's a, a way how we can get a handle on those qualities. And then another example would be, a tree. Metta would be the water, which is nourishing the tree. And then compassion would be the tree. And then mudita would be the flowers or the blossoms. And equipoise and upekkha would be the fruit, would be the highest, of those four qualities, according to the understanding of early Buddhism. And I said before that there are four tones or facets of universal empathy. And I think it's interesting, to reflect that the word empathy has the same root as the word apathy. And both of these words, are coming from the Greek word pathean, which means to suffer. And the word apathy means, unable to suffer, unable to draw near to suffering. And because of that, there's like a shutting down. And empathy is the capacity, to be with suffering. And is that, this capacity for empathy has very powerful consequences for us, as Homo sapiens, because it allows us to team up, to form these huge groups we have formed. It's the glue for civilization to be possible, because it's related, to social stability, which is possible if there's empathy, at least to a certain extent, that we can live together. And it said, that capacity started to, come through, of course, mothers, who have to bring up Homo sapiens children who are dependent on their mothers for a very long time, much longer than most animals. And then also it had something to do, once, the fathers recognized that they had part in the creation of a baby and they were willing to stay and, cooperate in the bringing up of the children, that enabled, the human brains to become larger. So it's all the whole, civilization which we have been able to form, and some of it hasn't gone very well, I would say. And the climate situation is showing that to us. But nevertheless, that we could form these large groups, that we could develop these large brains. It's all based on the capacity for empathy, so that we are able to stay together and support each other. So that's just also really good to take in. So it's like basically part of our equipment, of our evolutionary equipment. And those practices have been created so that we can make more out of those basic qualities, that we can cultivate them to become more powerful, because we also have this negativity bias, as an evolutionary equipment. And if we learn to harness those practices, they help us to not be so under the negativity bias, which can be very, very limiting. So there are both evolutionary ingredients, which we can learn to get to know, and then we can decide, which one we want to develop and which one we want to be more able to contain without suppressing. Taking the information but not becoming it, and using everything we have got to help us to open our minds and move out of the past into our full potential more and more. And those Brahmavihara practices help us to stretch the mind and really open it up wide, so that those negativity patterns, from the past, that they lose their power. Because if you, take, let's say you take a lump of salt and put it in a glass of water, then the water will become very bitter and you won't be able to drink it. But if you take the same lump of salt and put it in a bathtub, let's say, you could still drink it, because it's not going to have such an effect. And that's what is meant, with those practices. If you really learn to stretch the mind more and more, then whatever drops into the mind won't make such a big wave. So we have more capacity then to stay conscious and decide, what we want to do, how we want to respond rather than react. So the metta or maitri opens the heart from a wish, to protect, and then compassion turns the heart towards suffering, is able to stay open and allow the discomfort, not shutting down. And then mudita opens the heart towards the flourishing of the world, and and takes joy in that. And equanimity, upekkha, opens the heart towards the highs and the lows of the world, and is okay with both, not getting carried away by both. And then, starting, and also upekkha is very clear, in order for the transformation process to happen, we need to be able to stay with both the highs and the lows. We can't just choose, it's not a constant up, 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 but it's more like it's a ride, it's a bumpy ride. Life is just like that. And the word dukkha, which is very important word in the Buddhist teaching. I don't quite sure if you have the same word in the Vajrayana. Do you? Dukkha, do you have that word? Does anybody know?
Yes.
Alison? Yes? Have the same word? Okay. So I don't know if you know the etymology of the word, but dukkha, the first part of the word du means difficult, and the second part of the word ka means the axle hole in the center of a wheel. And it means, that the axle doesn't really fit well into the axle hole, and therefore it's a bumpy ride. So that's the meaning of the word dukkha. And a good translation is actually unsatisfactoriness. It's a much better translation than suffering, actually, because suffering sounds like, that suffering is not an innate quality of the world, but suffering is the result of attachment and grasping and clinging, and if we are able to let go, there won't be dukkha, there still will be discomfort, but there won't be dukkha. And that's a big difference between discomfort and suffering. And that's the crux of the teachings, because the teachings cannot free us from discomfort, because that's part of life. But the teaching can free us from suffering. That's what we can work with, and that's what we are doing in the teachings. And and the more we have that capacity to be with the discomfort, the more we are able to authentically respond, rather than to react in the way, repeating the past like over and over and over again. But in order to be able, to bring the past into the present, we have to be able to stay open to our experience and allow it to change us, really. And let the Dharma speak through us by making some space, so that can happen. So this resiliency, to be able to be with the ups and downs, with the contractions and with the birthing pains, to be able to be with that's like what the Dhamma is encouraging us with these practices we have got and all of the frameworks, So we have a kind of a scaffolding we can lean into, as we are going through whatever life is throwing at us. And so those Brahmaviharas, they can be identified on 3 levels in our lives, in ourselves and in others. Number 1, it's an innate quality, as I said before, which can't be lost and can be cultivated to perfection, really. And that's what we want. And then it's also a recommended way of relating in the world, based on ethics and friendliness and so on. And number 3, it's the expected behavior of those, of saints and sages and enlightened beings. It's an expression of awakening. Because if awakening is about non-grasping, and letting go, of course, it would be the expected behavior, because non-grasping means, the mind is wide open, limitless. And through this and what these practices, and I'm gonna guide us in a meditation in a few minutes, these practices are here to show us the difference between the contracted mind and the wide open mind. And then we get kind of a hang of it, how it is, what's the natural capacity of the mind. And then, when the mind contracts, with greed or anger, because we know the open mind, we have much more capacity to, my mind is contracted. It's a bit of an alarm bell going off, be careful. Don't speak from that contracted mind. Don't act from that contracted mind. Just keep steady, So the practice is here so we get more able to recognize when the mind is contracted, and then be super careful, not to be carried away by that. And then once the mind has seen that, like really over and over and over again, it starts to let go, because it just doesn't want to have the trouble to, to kind of clean up afterwards. Because it knows on an ever deeper level, it's not worth it, it's not worth it because it's impermanent. And that's what those practices are here for, to get really sufficiently fed up with living from the past and getting more and more interested, to open up the potential, which is, part and parcel of being born, really. So, and, opening the mind to those different mind states, and challenges, doesn't mean that we're necessarily relaxed, but it means being aware of the contraction and letting it be, not falling for thinking a contracted mind is a bad mind or is wrong or anything. It's just, okay, right now I'm really challenged and I feel like really bad and I feel scared and I feel like really tight and everything, and being okay with that, because I know deep down, it's going to be impermanent. Even in the moment, it feels like it's never going to change, And usually, when we are not yet trained, when we don't have enough faith in the practice yet, we want to leave off steam, by saying something or eating something, putting, pressing it down, or, doing something to manipulate the feeling, to make it go away. And those practices, they help us to be able to make more space so that the feeling isn't completely overwhelming us. We give it more space. We give it more space. So we always need to start with those immeasurables, towards our own suffering first. And then if we are in a good place, in a stable place, then from there we allow it to radiate out. So we always need to start with ourselves right where we are, and then, trusting the Dhamma and our own capacity for transformation to take care of the rest, because this is laws of nature operating. We don't have to direct it, really. We just need to have a good practice, a good enough practice, a trustworthy teacher, source, where it comes from, and then do it. And the rest, has its own intelligence, and we can trust that. Because the Dhamma, wants to be understood. It's not going to hide from us. If we put in the causes and conditions, it's going to flourish. And maybe now we can just maybe start with a guided meditation. And the way how I'm going to teach today the 4 Brahma Viharas is going to be how it's spoken about in early Buddhism in the suttas. And there is one sutta in the what's called the Samyutta Nikaya 42.8, And the sutta is called the conch blower. So in the olden times, there were no newspapers and no radio and TV. So when there was a news to be distributed, there would be a person, with a loud instrument. And in that case, it's a conch, and that person would come on the marketplace and then blow the conch really loud. And then people would come all around him to make his announcement. And this conch, when he would stand and blow the conch, maybe from a roof or somewhere first, he would blow the conch and it would spread out. The sound would spread in all directions, above and below and around and everywhere. And that's the meditation instructions. And I'm going to talk you through that. And that's, how it is written in the early suttas. And we have a chant which is based on this instruction. And if there's enough time, I'm going to share that chant with you during the meditation in English. Okay. All right. So let's get going. So find a posture you can sustain for about 25 minutes. Just noticing, how you are coming to this meeting today, what you're bringing. And also, thinking of baby Breen, who is just, struggling to come out into the world. And we are all struggling, to develop our potential. And, what a perfect opportunity, this human life. Even it doesn't feel quite so perfect a lot of the time. And also thinking of when Kenmo Trollma in her retreat. She has had so many challenges recently with the house and really wanting to share the benefits that everything will go well. And it will all turn out to be a good thing. Even at the moment, it might be hard to connect with that thought. And feeling the weight of your body on the chair, on the cushion, and the gravity which gently pulls us towards the ground underneath where we are sitting. In my case, I'm sitting on Coast Miwok land here in San Rafael. Being aware, of all of the support the earth is giving us to be able to be here. The earth is a great being. And we are all part of her. And now, for the first round, we can work with metta, maitri, and bringing up an image of something or someone you love. In my case, I'm going to bring up the planet Earth, but we could bring up a little baby or puppy or something really sweet, which brings automatically up in the heart a sense of wanting to care, wanting to protect. And then just being with the sensation in the heart area. With that wish, may all beings be happy. May all beings be at ease. And just, noticing how the heart responds with that image, that wish. And with the in-breath, allow it to become more conscious. And with the out-breath, allow that quality to spread out through your body without any pressure. May all beings be happy. May all beings be at ease. And noticing, how the heart responds in this very mysterious way. I can totally sense it in my heart, in my chest. There's a fullness, a tingling, a humming, some kind of vitality, which isn't mine, an aliveness. And allowing it, to permeate the body. And then, when it feels right, allowing it also to radiate out in front of you. And then to one side, allow it to, like radiate further to one side without any pressure. It's just more like a light, which shines as much as it wants to shine. Then continuing to sweep around and to the back, and then all around, above and below, allowing that quality of metta to radiate. And while you are now sitting, I'm going to do the first part of the chant, which is these meditation instructions regarding the Brahma Viharas from the early scriptures. I will abide pervading 1/4 with a mind imbued with love and kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with love and kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. Just sensing that vitality, the aliveness, which is coming through us. And we become that, over time by resonating with that quality regularly, through the formal practice, we are becoming it. And that's why this is a training, a cultivation. Like learning any skill, you have to do it. And then you become that. You're walking it into existence. But it changes your body. And then, we can bring up an image of someone who is less fortunate than we are. Maybe someone who is, sick right now, or going through some great challenges in their lives. And, turning that sense of goodwill towards the suffering of that person. And noticing, how that changes in the heart. That's a different quality. That's the quality of compassion, karuna. With the in-breath, becoming more intimate with that quality. And with the out-breath, allowing it to gently, spread out throughout your body again. With no pressure. And then when you're ready, allowing it to gently also radiate out in front of you. As far as it wants to. And then, sweeping to one side and behind, around, above and below. Sitting in a sphere of compassion. And sensing the vibration of that quality. It's different. Then the metta, the maitri, has a different tone to it. Kind of more goes down towards the ground. Then we can, bring up an image of someone who is successful, who has great joy. Maybe, a child successful in school or in sports, but just, someone who is really happy about some achievement. And then, noticing in the heart how that changes again the vibrations. It's more like an uprising, energizing a vitality, and connecting with that, and allowing that to lift us up, breathing that in, becoming really intimate with that, and then allowing it to spread out throughout the body. Then when time is right, allowing it again to radiate out in front of us without any pressure. And all around, above and below. And really sensing into the openness of the mind which isn't clinging to anything, but the mind is taking, those visualizations and the sentence, the mantra, may all beings have the causes of happiness, being happy and have the causes of happiness. And using that as a jumping board for the mind to open. And then, really savoring that openness of the mind as a process, constantly opening and opening. And then, that's how we familiarize ourselves with the open mind, the immeasurable mind, so that we can remember it, at times when we are challenged and when the mind closes in contraction, then we become aware of that. Careful. That's all, not making it to be different than what it is, but being able to hold the contraction in awareness. That's all which is what's needed. It's not about changing the mind willfully, but it's about knowing what's happening. And then through cultivation, the mind starts to see the drawbacks of the contracted mind and the benefits of the open mind, and it starts to respond, it starts to adapt. Not because we're going to be beating it into shape, but because it comes from inside. And as we're coming now to the last of the four qualities, the upekkha, we can again, bring up an image. Maybe image of a grandmother who, has seen the ups and downs of life. And she knows, she can't really force feed that to her children or grandchildren or great grandchildren. But she can be there, she can be there for them to come and lament and feel cared for, and help them to develop that same equanimity by experiencing life with awareness. Really, being in touch with the vastness of the mind, which isn't clinging to anything. And the ease, of the mind, which is like that. And, as we are closing slowly our session, I'm going to end with a chant. Again, with a chant of these meditation instructions. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with equanimity. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. So really, being in touch with the open mind and noticing, the ease of that, and that it is conditioned. It's a conditioned mindset. And we can learn, the skills to set the causes and conditions into place so that the mind will respond with openness rather than with grasping. And that comes, from experiencing it, consciously in these former sittings, and then when the mind contracts, just adding mindfulness, adding awareness, and not, falling for the compulsion to get rid of it. So I think, that brings us slowly to the end of the session today. And I don't know, Annie, if there's anything else which needs to be said.
We could do closing prayers, and
Yes.
I will share that screen with us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. By this virtue may I achieve omniscience, and may all who travel on the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. For this realm, encircled by snow-covered mountains, you are the source of every benefit and bliss without exception. Tenzin Gyatso, you who are one with Avalokiteshvara, may you remain steadfast until samsara's end. The embodiment of the three precious jewels, Padmapani, who holds the teachings of the victorious one, seeing the all-goodness meaning with the wisdom eye, may you who are spontaneously established activities live long for hundreds of kalpas. Noble Manjushri, the Lord of Speech, who manifests to hold the teachings of the Triple Gem, who raises the lamp of the sage's teachings, may you who are the light of the Dharma live long for hundreds of kalpas. The one known in the Holy Land as Arya Deva emanated into the Gar clan of eastern Tibet as Chidingpa, the heart son of Jigten Sumgong. May the life of glorious Garchen remain steadfast for 100 eons. We acknowledge that Vajradakini Nunnery is on the traditional unceded land of the Wabanaki Confederacy, the stewards of this land for many centuries before European settlement. We honor all indigenous peoples' beliefs, cultural heritage, their relationship with the land, the knowledge of their elders, and the spirit of the ancient ones. This recognition of indigenous territorial land and beliefs is a small step along the long road of recognizing the truth of our shared history and moving towards reconciliation. We will continue this journey with our indigenous neighbors as we weave our paths together in right relation. And I just want to say a huge thank you to Ayya for coming and speaking with us. I put their website in the chat room, and I'm sure there's a place there to make donations if you'd like to support that work. And also just a reminder that Vajradakini operates on donations as well. So, you know, if you would like to support our Sangha as well, you can go to the website. And thank you all for coming, and I hope you all have a wonderful